Hey, the stream is on again. Been a while since I did this the last time. So, how do you do this? I got my coffee. And, yeah. So, I was going to start slow today and just get a grip of things. So, I'll just fire up this little screen here. So, do join me in the chat and ask me whatever or tell me whatever if I do typos, mistakes, or just being stupid. Okay, so here you see the chat, my terminal window, and my Emacs window. I started to look, come back to an HP3 issue here just before I started the stream. So maybe I should just pause a little bit and we can switch over to this little thing. Here's the curl website. So this is the curl website, and there's not a lot to say about that. I did a release last week, 5 days ago. So we're in, I should say, the sort of a slow post-release week, and it's I think it's pretty nice period. Just when we shipped something. Of course, we had bugs in this release. We haven't found any super serious ones yet, so I don't think we will do a patch release, but we'll see. We got some nasty ones. I could show you. I have a few. We have a few on GitHub. Perhaps one of the worst ones is the use of the free, which makes it makes an awesome crash occasionally. Yeah, at least I know just one user, the MPC music player. Their server side code crashes with this because of a stupid mistake of mine. And there's another problem. Where is that? Oh yes, but that's actually an older problem. Using a shared connection cache between multiple threads can cause crashes as well. For the first one, I have a patch that I'm pretty satisfied with, that I think I'm going to be able to land. So if I read it, I did this pull request. Was it yesterday? Well, I did it 17 hours ago, so yeah, that was yesterday. And then, so I think that's a good fix. But for the other one, this lotdataconnect problem is actually sort of a racing condition. So if you do a lot of threads using the same connection cache, it can misbehave, and I have a patch for that as well here in 4557. But annoyingly enough, I don't know, maybe it's annoying, maybe it's good, but the CI tests on FreeBSD fail on this, some of them, and I've been struggling to figure out why. It works. The CI builds on Linux and Windows. They work. Oh, right, they don't run on Windows. They only run with pthread system. So they work fine on Linux, and they work fine on my machine. It worked fine when I tried to rerun them on my FreeBSD virtual machine. And it also works fine on the FreeBSD 13 one, where I build and run curl with the Clang's address sanitizer. So it's sort of annoying that it's hard to reproduce this crash with my fix. So I'm struggling to hunt it down and fix it. Yeah, the AppVeyor red one is our regular problems with AppVeyor. So we get false positives every now and then. Just annoying. So I'm struggling a little bit. But I wanted to go, today I wanted to go into some issues. Which issues? HTTP3 perhaps. So I got a report last week, or a few days ago, 3 days ago, about doing HTTP3 with quiche and a server that sends headers in actually in a non-compliant order. You know, maybe you don't know, but HTTP3 is similar to HTTP2 in this aspect that they have in the protocol there are regular old style HTTP headers and there are pseudo headers. And the pseudo headers are a new invention that came with HTTP2 and with that's included in HTTP3 as well. And they provide metadata header like, but are new for these versions. So they, for example, in HTTP2 and HTTP3, the status code, you know, the one that says HTTP/1.1 200 OK, that 200 is the status code, right, in a response. In HTTP2 and HTTP3, that response comes as a pseudo header and not as a response line. And that pseudo header, or more specifically, all pseudo headers are supposed to be sent before any other header. So first pseudo headers, then regular headers. When you send headers with HTTP2 and HTTP3. And pseudo headers in HTTP2 are enforced to come before regular headers by the library we use, NGHTTP2. It'll bail out if they come in the wrong order. And that goes for NGHTTP3 as well, for HTTP3, but we support two different libraries for HTTP3, right? Both NGTCP2 and, well, really, for HTTP3 we actually support NGHTTP3, but NGHTTP3 in turn requires NGTCP2. But anyway, so we do that NG series and we do the quiche, those two different things for HTTP3. And the quiche library doesn't check that the pseudo headers arrive before the regular headers. So I did a PR the other day that handles getting them in the wrong order, but then here it is. Where is it? So I created this handle pseudo headers in another order, but then it struck me after I did that approach that it wasn't really the clever approach, because since it's not allowed in the protocol, I shouldn't just handle it. I should better error out and return an error if this happens. And I figured I'd give that a go to start with today. I then have actually we have several things to do with HTTP3, so it's a little bit, if nobody interrupts me or objects or have comments enough, I might just proceed and do some other HTTP3 stuff or whatever. I'm going to talk about HTTP3 this week again in Umeå in northern Sweden at Umeå University. If you want to, you can check out this site. It's my talks, upcoming talks on my personal webpage. It lists my upcoming presentations, and I'm going, as you can see here, I'm going to talk about HTTP3 5 more times this year, and then possibly more in 2020. But okay, enough about that. Back to my handle pseudo headers in another order. I'm going to ditch this pull request because I don't think we need to handle it. We need to handle it, but we should better return an error instead of letting them pass. So that's what I'm going to dive into. So here I have my Emacs and my terminal and the chat window. So here's the code for the quiche backend, quiche being the Cloudflare HTTP3 and quick library. And we have a callback for each header. So here you can see this code this converts the incoming HTTP3 header to an outgoing HTTP1 lookalike header, and it assumes that we get the status one before the other ones, and therefore it generates the response code like HTTP1 style, and then converts the incoming to regular headers like this. It actually works pretty good because servers in general will send them in the right order because that's what this protocol says they should. But if they don't, if someone violates that, we don't detect that, and we might generate the HTTP1 headers and the response code in the wrong order, so it's sort of messed up, and that's not good. So I want to make sure that if status is not the first header that we get, we should just return error. And that's what I wanna, there's a test len. That's an nlen, that's so if status is not, if it's not status, and headers nlen, headers nlen, if it's 0, so nothing has been appended yet, that's an error for us. There are other pseudo headers, but there aren't any other pseudo headers in responses, so I can just pretend that there's only one pseudo header because that's the only one we care about, and that's the only one that is supposed to arrive for us when we get a response. So if we get a response, it is a header, we haven't appended anything yet, this is wrong. And what error codes do we have? Do we have an HTTP3? I know we have a HTTP2 one. HTTP3. No, we don't. Oops. A problem in the HTTP3 framing layer. So I could grab this error code and make it an HTTP3 one. Tempting. Obsolete 20. When did we use that? Alright, should okay, so it used to be FTP write error back until 2007, so it's been unused for a long time. Yeah, August 2007, so over 12 years, so I guess we can use that without anyone getting upset. I'm going to call it HTTP3 Right, it was obsoleted at the same time. Let's take this one. Which version number will it be? Oh, let's call it this for now. HP3. The question, should I call it HP3 or should I call it Quick, or should I call it Quick HP3, or should... let's call it HP3. So if it's not, if it hasn't added anything and there's a header coming and it's not status, it's wrong. If RC, what do we do about this? We do this. We do curl code RC. In what I like C or C++ more, I definitely like C much more than C++. I think it goes with me being more used to C and never ever having been sort of gotten over there and becoming really friendly with C++, but I think in general people mess up C++ code so much. So I prefer plain old C and keeping the code simple and easy to read, which people have a really hard time to do with C++. Yeah, if you want to see or go look at a really huge C++ project, and you'll see that they tend to never be easy to read, even though they have that ambition, all of them, of course. Then you could argue that maybe C codes aren't either easy to read, but I think it's at least easier because there are less tools to make it confusing and complicated with C, while C++ sort of... it's not really the language's fault, but people enjoy having all those fancy tools and weirder things, and I always find it interesting that they ship new features all the time in C++, and everyone is just jumping onto that bandwagon and make their programs even less readable by all those new magic things that they appreciate. So the GitHub project is here. Here's the link. But it's really easy. Go to github.com/curl and you can find our different repositories. We have a few different ones, the curl being the main one, which is the command line tool and the library in the same repository. A little bit confusing maybe, but it's very convenient for us who work on it. So, okay, if this, how many years I worked with C so far? Oh, so many years. I actually learned C in the beginning of the 1990s. So around, but I didn't work with it, but I learned it in the beginning of the 1990s. So I'm approaching 30 years. But I didn't work with C code until really 1993. I started my first development job was that was pure development software, was in 1993, and then I worked with C code. So from 1993 I've done it professionally, and I've basically done it every day since. Yeah, it takes a while to get into it and learn it and to master it, I would say. But the good thing with C, I think, is that it's a very small language, so there are not that many different things to learn and to do. Of course, I think one of the problems with C is that there are many undefined behaviors, and that we have sort of learned to live with and work with, but they're undefined, so we can't really depend on them, even if we accidentally do occasionally. So I then just made it return an error code here if there's a problem in the incoming header. That's a really tiny fix. I believe my build here is actually... So I just want to check that I actually have built it to use quiche, and it says quiche in the version output, boring SSL for the TLS library, and you know, a lot of different third-party dependencies, but the quiche one was the important one. And then it says HTTP3 here as a feature. So if I build everything, it failed because I did that error code thing. Question is, should I do that error code thing? Well, if I don't... Well, first I should do this. I should provide a better error message for... This says info-f. It shouldn't say info for information, and we have an fail-f for failures. More error message style. It should say like this. Fail-f error in the HTTP3 response header. Header. Yeah. Let's say so. Break. Should it do return? No, it's just a stream error, because other streams can continue when this happens. Okay. I can also build it within Emacs itself. That's sometimes handy. Oops. Right, the error code thing. It's not obsolete 20 anymore. It's HTTP3. On what do we call the HTTP2 one? Stream error. Oh, it's stream error too. Vague, but it's very generic. So now it builds fine. So I think this is a better fix for this problem rather than the more complicated one I did. So I think I'll go over to Firefox and go over to my pull request. I did this. Where is it? Quiche handle pseudo headers in another order. Rethought and will handle differently. Close. delete branch, get rid of it. It's snowing outside right now. And if you didn't know it, I'm in Sweden. I'm actually outside Stockholm, Sweden. We have a pretty chilly day today. Sub-0 degrees Celsius. Okay, so I removed the different tag and I will do this instead. I will create myself a new little branch. Quiche. Back there is my username on GitHub. Quiche reject bad header. Good name for a branch. Commit it. Quiche reject headers. Reject. In the wrong order. Pseudo. I always spell pseudo the wrong way, right? Pseudo. Pseudo headers must come before regular headers. Headers or cause an error. That fixes the little thing. Yeah, soon it's sort of one of those. It's one of those words that they don't sound like you spell them anyway, so it's more of remembering how you spell it. So the problem I found file debug. That's the 4571. Fixes 4571. It was actually reported by. It was actually reported by Cynthia Cohn in the Cloudflare repository over here. So here's the. I filed this bug because I found it, or I was alerted to it in Cloudflare's quiche. So I copied it in over here, but Security Insanity filed it, so I'll give her the credit. Bam. So I commit. Boom. I had to enter my password because I do all my commits signed, and I hadn't done that since I restarted my machine. So I actually do all my commits are signed by default, which you can see if you go to here's my Firefox. So if you check out the commits on GitHub, you can see them. It says verified on my commits that I do from my developer machine. So it says verified. That's simply because it's my commits are signed with my GPG key. It's not the major thing, but I think it's nice. So where am I? I wanted to make a pull request. So I'll just push my new. Yeah, I should show my private key and see how long it takes until someone makes something really stupid. But no, showing your private key would be difficult, or I would really have to make an effort to mess up like that. Not that I'm a stranger to messing up, but I could at least try to avoid it. So I'm just going to create a pull request to fix that quiche issue in this simpler way than I approached before. So this is just 12 new lines and remove 3, so it's easy peasy. It's just that I create a new error code, and that's a bit of a... that made it a bigger change than... this is going to fail a test. And I can show you immediately, so I'm going to have to update this. So I'll just rebuild everything, and it should... I already did it, so it doesn't do anything. My check source target takes a little time because I have a check that also verifies all the commit year ranges in my files. They have to look up a bunch of Git logs and compare, so it takes a few seconds. So okay, I'll just rebuild my test suite so that I want to run test 11.19 because I know that is going to fail, so I better do that and but make sure I fix it. Here it is, docs libcurl symbols inversions. Symbols inversions is a file that just tracks symbols in the libcurl header files and when we added them or removed it or deprecated it. So when I run 11.19, boom, it says failed. And it failed because it couldn't find curl EHP3. I told you, curl EHP2 is there. Curl EHP3 added in. Well, if we add this, I think it should be 68. Just to make sure it's sorted properly. Okay. And if I rerun 11.19 test, it works. Verify that the symbols, inversions, and headers are in sync. That's actually a really good test. Make sure that we have a fully updated list of symbols and in which versions they are added. So if you write a program, you know that if you want to use one of these symbols, you can actually know in which libcurl version you can depend on it to exist. And now I look at the IRC window where people are saying something. Yes, we can. So we're in the IRC channel #curl, of course, on Freenode. If you ever want to chat on anything curl, night and day, we're about 200 people there most of the time. Most people just, of course, just lurk and are quiet. But some of us discuss matters, find bugs, or talk about other random things in there. So I'll just push an update to my pull request like that. Boom. Okay, so that was my first pull request for the day. Quiche reject headers in the wrong order, and I amended it with another commit. I will squash them into one when I merge them. yeah, that's another pull request by me, but I'm waiting for more feedback because this caused a crash and I wanted to get it verified that it actually solves the crash, even if I think it's the right one. That's Jay's work. Here's another pull request for fixing slightly vaguely specified SSH known host problems. I'm discussing it with the author in that pull request. I think he should make sure that it's more clearly specified exactly what it does, and it seems to be doing two things, and I think he should do it in two different pull requests to make each of them more specific and clarified, and make it easier to review and land them individually. Here's my pull request. Let me show you, and one of the problems with doing live stream development is that it's really hard to actually debug really difficult things, but let's do it anyway, because why not? I did give this a quick look, I think yesterday or the other day, because so I fixed a race condition and now I can't reproduce any crash, but not on Travis, it's actually on Cirrus CI. I get crashes on test 1541, and I remember that it is 1541 because it's the model number of the floppy disk for the Commodore 64 back in the day. But anyway, so if I look at it, it looks like this. If I bam, 1541. And here we can see test 1541 core dumped. That's not good, right? Not good at all. Could be a bad test. Then it wouldn't be my fault, but I need to go back and read it. So this is a complicated test. It does this, what it says, really. It runs, it invokes and starts 67 threads. They run for 7 seconds, and each of these 67 threads, they load URLs, the same URL, I believe. Here's the test case URL. Yeah, they all use the same URL, I'm pretty sure. Where is it? There's the URL. Which then, so just a way to make sure that when it returns the connection, after it's done with it and returns it to the connection pool, another thread can take that connection or not take it. So it should just work and it shouldn't crash, but so the person who reported it, for him it works fine with this patch, and as I said, it works fine for my Linux test cases. And I had another pretty brutal case that I used to reproduce and debug this and fix it. But now the problem is that it only crashes on FreeBSD on Cirrus CI. And it doesn't crash when I enable the address sanitizer build on one of the FreeBSD machines. So I guess address sanitizer might change the timing a little bit, so maybe it makes things less likely. So yeah, here's the actual crash now. So here's what it says: assertion failed. So this is a debug build that has some added assertions in the code, just to make sure that here's a crazy condition that shouldn't occur, but it does. And in this case, let's see, it's in curl concache on unlock. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to have to check out the correct branch name, and it's called shared connection race. Yes. Just want to make sure that we get this correct line number. So it's in the cache file, and it is line 166. Here it is. So it unlocks the connection cache, and unlock is a macro that works like this. I should rerun this. Where am I? It works like this. So if in the curl debug case, curl unlock, it has this debug assert that it makes sure that the variable is true or it will fail. And in this case, it fails. So it's not true. And it should only set it here as true after it gets the lock. And it sets it to false before it releases the lock. It should be fine. So if I don't have the debug build, the macros, they don't check that variable. That variable doesn't even exist in the regular build, I'm pretty sure. Yep. So back. So I have an assert that oh, right, yes. Cache unlock. Here it is. So the question is, in cache unlock gets called from a few different places when it unlocks the connection cache, and it locks the connection cache, of course, to be able to modify it or to traverse it, so that makes sure that nobody is messing with it at the same time someone is reading it. Here's one unlock, because it's a return afterwards. There's another with a return. Maybe I should avoid the return. It's usually a good idea to avoid returns mid-function. Unlock and unlock. Right, because that gets a lock. I wonder if it can fail. What happens if it doesn't return? No, can never fail. It always returns. It always does a lock. Unlock. Yeah, those are the locks or unlocks. Yeah, it was exactly as tricky as I thought it was. Ooh. Why? So I need to do, so if it unlocks and it's already, so that if it's, it seems like someone else has also unlocked it. So like erase condition. As I said, I have a lot of threads doing this, so maybe 2 of them get the same. But how can another one change it, since the lock the locks are there, and the locks are pthread locks. The locks are mutex locks, pthread mutex locks and pthread mutex unlock. And it's a global lock because it's only one. I have a few things that are sort of milestones for curl. In regular we don't have a big roadmap for curl because pretty much no one is working on curl for more than just occasionally and in the spare time, except for me. So I tend to rather focus on a few things that I want to work on in curl. So I have a little roadmap for myself for the coming year or so. And otherwise, everyone else is free to do whatever they want, and they can propose and suggest things to do. In my case, since I do most larger features and larger changes anyway, so maybe this is sort of the bigger roadmap. But for example, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm bumping the mic. But for example, ESNI, so roadmap is a file in the repository actually, and it lists a bunch of features here that I want to work on, that I might work on. It's not a guarantee or a promise, but things that are seem relevant and current. I want to work more on HTTP3. Of course, HTTP3 is going to be a big deal going forward, and HTTP3 is supported now, but we have a lot of gaps in functionality still. So I want to work more over time to make sure that we fix the functionality add the missing parts for HTTP3 to work really well. And HTTP3 is going to change a little bit more as the draft 24 shipped, was it last week? So yeah, the libraries and everyone are updating everything to HTTP3 draft 24, and I want to make sure that we support draft 24 properly. And of course, I want to add things like make sure that we can multiplex properly over HTTP3, which I haven't fixed for any of the backends yet. And there are a few other things. Push for HTTP3, there was something else. So yeah, we have HTTP3 stuff pending. And then I have fun things like adding HSTS support. I think that seems relevant. And then I'm thinking primarily on the headers, runtime HSTS, possibly also this, the roadmap I show you with the link to this pull request, that's a pull request for reading a preload, HSTS preload file, which I think is also a good idea, but maybe a lesser function for most curl users, because that's a huge file. And maybe people are have more specific purposes when they use curl than they want to load this huge general purpose browser sort of oriented HSTS file. HSTS being the way that it prevents a browser or a client to go to the cleartext HTTP name, and it would switch to HTTPS by default without even trying the non-HTTPS version for a specific, a specified number of seconds into the future. So you could say this domain name will use HTTPS always for the next year or so, and curl would then only go to HTTPS to avoid, people to interfere with your connection. DNS over TLS has been mentioned a few times, and I want to make it happen. We support DNS over HTTPS already, so we have a bunch of the code there to generate DNS packages. We just have to tweak a little bit to make sure that we can do it over a raw TLS connection as well. That could be fun. And we have friends working on eSNI for encrypted SNI. SNI being one of the, not the very last maybe, but one of the remaining parts of the protocol setup in a regular HTTPS traffic that still is unencrypted and in plain text. So if someone snoops on your traffic, they can still see that SNI field in your outgoing HTTPS request. And that includes the hostname to which you're targeting, which of course is a privacy leak. So this is an attempt to encrypt that field. And eSNI is also not standard yet. The spec has actually moved around quite a bit. So there is at least Cloudflare at least deployed eSNI and runs it, but I believe they support a draft version that is now outdated. So the current eSNI spec works with a completely different eSNI than what Cloudflare runs. So it's a little bit unfortunate. So it makes it a chicken and egg problem. If we write something now, there's no server out there that supports it, but we don't want to write support for the old draft version because that's going out of, that's not the future. So it's it's a bit of an in-between state. Tiny curl is my work on making sure that we can switch off features in curl at build time that are large or complicated or possibly niche enough that some users would prefer to not have it installed, and especially then for tiny curl installations where you want to have a minimized curl version, really stripped for features but the smallest possible footprint. So I'm going to keep on poking on that and making sure that we can build really small curl versions, especially for those embedded systems that are one or a few megabytes in flash and RAM sizes, even smaller than the smallest embedded Linux versions. MQTT is a new protocol. Well, it's not a new protocol, it would be a new protocol for curl, and I want to see it happen. There's a pull request for it to bring it in. There's been some interests expressed in having it supported. I think it would be fun. Haven't really moved much in that direction recently, but I want to go there. I'm not sure when it'll happen. And then we have other things like hard coding a local host, which is a fairly small detail, but could be valuable. Pretty much avoid doing any form of name resolving when localhost is used, just to make sure that we don't accidentally do name resolves for your domain name with a localhost host names, like if you're like I am on hacks.se, so that if I use localhost I wouldn't accidentally resolve localhost.hacks.se, because that might not be the actual localhost name. There are many protocols I would refuse to add, and in general a protocol for curl, which admittedly I haven't enforced through the times everywhere and always, but I think a curl protocol should, there are sort of two big qualifiers. First, there should exist a URL syntax. It doesn't necessarily have to be an IETF standard, but there should be a URL standard how to express the transfer or what you want to do. And then it should be or should be able to be transfer related. So you should be able to see it as an upload or a download. You send data or receive data as in one step. So interactive sessions. For example, I think Telnet is a really crappy match for us. We support Telnet, but it is crappy because Telnet is not upload download. It's an interactive session. That's why I think SSH, pure SSH, is a pretty crappy match too. So we don't support pure SSH because it's not an upload download scenario. You could possibly argue that it can be, like if you send an ls command over SSH, it's just a download of the ls output. So yeah, maybe, but then there's no URL format for the SSH protocol because for that reason. So that's why there's, for example, no pure TCP. Someone sometimes asks for pure TCP connectivity, but there's no URL format. It's not pure upload download for protocols. So I would say there are many protocols that don't really match curl or the curl model. So MQTT could possibly stretch, but it's also right. If you do pure TCP, people that would be like Netcat, and actually quite a lot of people actually sort of abuse curl already for that, since curl has this connect only support. So you could ask libcurl to only connect to that remote site, and then you get the underlying socket and you use that to send and receive data. So you can already sort of do that in a relatively ugly way, and usually people end up unhappy with it because it's not as great as you might think in the first few moments. And really, it's much better if you use curl for the protocols it supports and use it the regular way, not try to just get the socket from underneath and fiddle away with it the way you want. Because if you want to do socket style TCP connections, you're usually better off just not use curl for that. So I think in general, I think it's better when we make sure that curl remains sort of to do the things it should do. Transfers, uploads, downloads for transfer related protocols, and the other stuff, that's for other protocols. Yeah, I'm even thinking of more similar to the kernel menu config thing. It's actually listed last here as the last. As you can see, there's nothing below. And I'm having a little bit of second thoughts around it, since I haven't really got any particular interest in it. So I'm thinking maybe I won't get into that. But maybe, it depends. Just because we have this pretty large amount of different things you can enable and disable now in the build. And some of them are more or less hierarchical, so that sort of one depends on another, and maybe it would be better to have some sort of interface for users to work with what you want to enable, disable. But I also am a little bit of a scared of the work and where that would take us and me. So yeah, I'm a little bit hesitant of what to do there. Maybe not. If someone feels very strongly about it, we might go there. But if not, I think I have a lot of other things to do that I would rather do before I get there anyway. I sometimes feel that, this list with things to do, it's already so packed. And I have a hard time just to, get to one of these. So these are more like, these are ideas and things that I will consider to do. I also might not. And if you go to the to-do document in the docs folder on GitHub or in the source tree, you can see that we have a lot of other exactly. Hard coding localhost is really easy. You just have to make sure that you handle IPv4, IPv6 properly. but otherwise it should be really easy. The only little thing about hard coding localhost is there might be someone that actually depends on the existing functionality. So I'm sort of a little bit. We should try to just do it and see what happens, and if people are screaming or happy. I did a little poll a while ago, half a year ago, so what people would be interested in among those roadmap things, and I think it's roughly ordered in the order people wanted it. I mean, the top one was the most asked for, and so on. But the problem, people tend to ask for modern build systems every now and then. First, I don't think CMake qualifies as a modern build system anymore, since CMake is pretty much 20 years old too right now. So, and I don't think using CMake is a solution to anything for anyone actually, because I think it brings its own set of problems. It replaces AutoTools problems with a set of CMake problems, and I resisted CMake for a long time. Well, curl is old, so a long time that was a long time ago too. And then a lot of people said, yeah, we should go with CMake because blah blah blah. And then I said, sure, we can add CMake support, and we did a long time ago now too. I think it's 10 years ago, maybe more. So we have CMake support to build curl, but CMake, the support for CMake in curl is still way subpar to the AutoTools setup, because we don't have enough people who know about CMake. So doing things in CMake is, people will say, yeah, that it's easier to handle CMake, but nobody knows how to write things in CMake. Everyone knows how to do things with AutoTools in Configure. So doing things in AutoTools in Configure, that might be cumbersome and annoying, but people know how to do it, so we get that done. In CMake, nobody knows it, nobody does it. That's sort of, everyone thinks about using CMake might seem easier, but nobody writes CMake code. So 10, 15, 12 years later, our Configure build is still the primary one, and the CMake one is the subpar one, and is still the subpar one, has been from the beginning. And the distance between the Configure one and the CMake one has sort of maybe remained, even sort of grown over time. So if you want to build something with curl, yeah, you can build curl with CMake, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone really. Well, before CMake, we did everything without CMake. So AutoTools has been the primary thing to build whatever outside of Windows since a very long time. I don't remember exactly when it started, but I did my first AutoConf things for curl, I think, before the millennium shifted. So I think the first configure script for curl was in, I'm not sure it's even in the, right, in November 1998 I did with curl, worked with configure. It doesn't say when I added the CMake. – 2009, so it's actually a little bit over 10 years now. So yeah, CMake is fine, but I think it suffers a little bit similar to how we do Windows. That there's a bunch of users who would like to use it, but we don't have that many contributors who actually enhance that part. And personally, I'm not a big fan of CMake. I mean, the language, how you write things and how you work with CMake, so I prefer to not do things with CMake. So I guess I would maybe not even partly, maybe a lot to blame for the situation, since I could have just given up on configure and gone completely CMake, but I've never been that friendly with CMake, so I've allowed others to do these CMake parts. And it works with CMake. If you want to build curl with CMake, it works. If you're happy with what it supports. It doesn't support at all the same set of configurability that you can do with Configure. Well, there are a bunch of different options to build things, and for me, I don't really care if there are good ones out there. So sure, I mean, there are many fine ones, but I can't just switch to any new fine ones any other day. No, I work with what we have, and we need to have Configure anyway for a lot of these systems, and everything. I mean, modern day build systems, they tend to be focused on what they call all platforms, and for all platforms these days, that's 3. That's Windows, Linux, and Mac. And a lot of these, they're really good for those all platforms, but all platforms for curl, that means a lot more platforms than just 3. So I want to make sure that anyone can remain and keep building curl for all the weirdo platforms. So I can't ditch a lot of things anyway. So going with one of these things, that means adding yet another build version to curl. And do we really benefit from adding yet another build version? I think we sometimes should rather work on removing build versions so that we get a simpler life instead of complicating our lives. So if someone brings out something new to build curl with, sure, but tell me why we want to replace AutoTools and Configure for curl, because it's really hard to do that, and nobody has managed yet during these 20-something years. And I might be a bit of a conservative when it comes to this, but I think also that we've invested a lot of time and effort in making sure and polished all the macros and scripts and everything to make sure that you can actually do all this. You can build curl on these 71 different operating systems, and replacing that, it's a lot of work, and you should really consider if it's worth going that route. Well, I wouldn't say that, BSD is really simple in comparison to, for example, I would say that the most weirdo platform we support, and it has always been, that's Windows, because Windows is such a different environment in so many ways. So if you count like if-defs in the code or special cases in the code, I would assume that Windows is the most different one compared to the mainstream one. I mean, BSD is, you can basically pretend that BSD is Linux on almost everywhere, or one of these other Unix-like systems. So there are so many Unixes or RTOSes that are pretty much POSIX compliant, so I don't need to care about which OS it is, they just work. So 2009. Should add it in my history file that we added CMake support in April. If Windows systems have become easier to work with, that's a good question. I don't think they have. I think it's basically the same, because Windows users, they're all Windows users are accustomed to do things with, Visual Studio. You load a project and you press F5 or whatever it is, and it just builds everything, and you don't actually know how it does it or what happens. And I think it's the same. I think curl on Windows has become easier to build and work with, but I don't think it's because of the changes in Windows or their stuff. It's because we have improved in the kernel side. And also we have gradually improved our CI build so that we actually make sure, and we build a lot of the different things on Windows now. I mean, for every commit and every PR and so on. So it's easier now to make sure that we don't break things on Windows when we fix code. Well, curl, you can build curl on Windows with all of those. You can build it with MingW, you can build it with CMake, you can build it with Visual Studio, you can build it with nmake directly from make files. So you can build it on Windows. We support a lot of different ways. We primarily we tested with all of those actually in the CI. So, and we really should test it with all of those, because if we don't, we break it occasionally, or we have the, actually, I think it was 7.66.0, you know, not the last one, but the second to last one released 8.5 weeks ago. I broke the Windows build with the, what we call the Win build system that uses nmake from Visual and builds with Visual Studio compiler. And I broke it just because we didn't have that in the CI, but now we do. So yeah, Windows is a particular platform, and that's also why we have official builds for Windows these days. So if you go to downloads on the curl website, you can find is actually, so we have the curl project, so we have official curl downloads for Windows, so it actually takes you to this curl hacks.se/Windows. So we have host Windows binaries that we build and offer, and that's the only platform for which we offer binary builds actually. Otherwise, I always say that in the curl project we ship source code, and we only ship source code. That's a release is a new tarball, but the Windows build is an exception, and we do the official Windows builds because people are always having trouble to build on Windows for various reasons, because doing things on Windows is never the same as anywhere else, and it's Windows users and Windows developers are not used to getting code from open source projects like this. So yes, the official binary is built with MingW. It's actually cross-compiled even from on Linux, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it works fine, and Victor is doing this, and it also our build system also auto generates this information. So this info here is provided automatically on every build that he does, and the builds basically work automatically as well. So they work automatically, they provide this information, and we upload it and provide it here automatically, and then they're all, it's a very nice setup that is automatable, and it's reproducible, and you can verify it, and you can download, actually you can download all the dependencies here too. So it's a pretty nice setup for being a Windows build. So yeah, right, so there's even logs. You can see the log from the particular build here, and they're built on AppVeyor. So here's the entire Windows build, the most recent one. Blah, 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 blah. And as I said, we support or provide that Windows build just because we have had so many people have problems with the Windows build. So they have problems to build it, and then it created a universe where a lot of different sources were hosting and offering curl builds for Windows. And so that that made our users go out and download curl installs from everywhere, insecure places, just random places on the internet that would offer curl builds. It wasn't really ideal, so we sort of owned the problem ourselves, and now thanks to Victor here, he provides these excellent builds, and so we can offer these from the official site. Otherwise, as I said, these are the only official releases. They're just the source code turbos. And we also have a script, so this download page, which lists all the different operating systems, versions, and where to download curl for them. It is generated by a script that checks these packages a few times every day, and it updates it. So it works pretty nice, actually. So the yellow one are the ones that are up to date. Solaris up to date, VMS up to date, Windows up to date. Yeah, and a bunch of the Linux distros are also up to date. Kind of cool. So, connection cache. I know. I wonder if that is reproducible. The other FreeBSD crash. Let me check if that's the same. 1541. It makes quite a lot of gets in those 7 seconds. Standard error says, what does it say? What does it say? Bum, bum, bum. No. It just ends. Yeah, that's what I remember from before. It says core dumped, but the log doesn't say anything, and I have a hard time to see what the heck it does there. Yeah, I have a question in the annual curl survey what I should do with curl 8 and when I should consider it. Yes, curl 7 has been going for a long time, and originally, or I at least used to think that I should save the bump to number 8 when we would do something, major API wise or something biggish. But I don't want to do anything major, so I want to keep the API. And I once thought about cleaning up a few things and bumping the SO name number and everything, so that sort of get rid of a few older stupid things we did in the past. We could fix to not, some of the worst mistakes we could fix. I actually think I have them mentioned in the to-do. Like here, we could do a next major release. Clean up return codes, remove obsolete defines. We could change ints to size t in APIs. We could remove a bunch of functions that we claim are deprecated. And I sort of, yeah, we could do that, but we could also not do that. So So I'm leaning more towards, no, I don't want to do any major changes. I don't want to break the API either. I don't want to bump the SO name. So what do I do with version 8 then? I'm leaning towards more like, you know, a Linux kernel thing. Just at some point, just bump the number and be happy with it without any particular reason. Just because the minor number is getting so big. So we're working on 7.68, probably the next release. 68 is a really high number. And I have this vision that I don't want 68 to reach 100. So never, there won't be a 7.100 because I think 7.100 would be really confusing to users because it would look like 7.1 to many people. So before 7.100 I need to come up with a way to bump the number 8. And since we do releases every 8 weeks, we can count the time we have, and it's a few years off. But yes, at some point there will be a version 8. Probably without any major changes and just, hey, today it's version 8. And it's not gonna mean much in terms of no major changes, but maybe if I do something slightly larger, you know, change the logo. No, I don't know. So until someone has come up with a really good idea, or until I get bored by it or something else, we'll stick to version 7. The last time I bumped the SO number in the API was 2006. So I actually think it's kind of cool that we will just keep on working. So if you built an application using libcurl back in 2006, you can rebuild it and use a modern libcurl as is, and it works the same way. And I think we can continue down this route. Is that what I think? What's sometimes forgotten, what's really nice with not changing the API or the way we work, is that the documentation and the examples, they work. The documentation from 10 years ago, it's still the same, right? Well, I mean, we fix it and we improve the documentation so it becomes better, but that's also good because it works the same way, so we can spend a long time in polishing it and improving it, and it just gets better over time. And whatever if you Google for an example or find stuff on Stack Overflow or whatever, chances are really big that you can run that example 10, 15 years later because curl is backwards compatible. Of course, if you use modern features, you can only go forward. You can't go backward to use a really old version if you use newer features. Okay, so I think I need to come up with a good way to figure this out. It's really annoying, this, and especially the one that doesn't say anything about the crash, just dies after, and the log doesn't show anything. Okay, I need to just drop that for a second because I don't think I'll be able to solve it here on the live stream. As I said before, actually thinking and working really hard on debugging complicated problems, that's difficult, I think, to do while talking about it and just clicking around. I'm not really my best thinker while I sit here and talk on the live stream. Excellent question. No, it won't, but I don't think I'll see how that's curl related. Now I'm going to look into let's dive into a little code review. Why not? 1.5 hours and I haven't done much, but I've been talking about lots, so I think it's been fun. So I wanted to go into this Here's a code contribution for 2 new command line options. It's actually, we discussed this option in issue 4277, this one. It's a feature request to make it easier to use e-tags with HTTP. So each e-tag is pretty much a way for the server to give an identity to an object on the site, or for that particular version of the resource. So you could, if you get a document, whatever, the server can say this is e-tag huge hex blob, and then you can, to make sure, I only want to get it again if it has been changed. So you can use the date for that, you know, if it's newer than this date, get it. But you can also ask for, if it's different than this e-tag, download it, which is a better way to handle sub-second resolution, and it's more of a, you don't need to care about the date, you want to know about updates to the particular resource. And that is done with e-tag, and it's a bit complicated to use that if you use the curl command line, of course, because you have to parse the headers and you have to send in a crafted HTTP header and understand the responses and everything. So I think it was a pretty good suggestion that we would support it in a better way, or provide some convenient options to make sure that you can actually use e-tag to do conditional requests. And here's the the pull request to offer this feature, and it's Sentinel with a funny spelling, who's working on this, and he suggested I would look at it again 18 hours ago, because I reviewed it before, I provided feedback, he has updated it a lot. Have you thought of a cookie file to contain previous invoke data? I don't... What do you mean previous invoke data? You mean from like command line, or? So I'm going to... So here's how this looks. E-tag compare and e-tag save. Well, I think that could be an interesting thing. I still don't think that would replace work like this, because it's the logic between those two that is special anyway. And parsing of, you know, understanding what a supported or properly formatted header is anyway. So I don't think in this case, for example, it wouldn't help. But sure, I think, for example, we've been discussing previously ways to yeah, this is, and this e-tag thing, e-tag pull request is this 4543. And it looks pretty good so far. It lacks test cases, which I think might be the biggest flaw right now, which isn't a major flaw, but test cases tend to show us how it really works and what doesn't work and so on. So this is 200 lines of code, which I think is 200 lines including the documentation, so it's not a very big thing. Here, I don't think he should use strucomp. I think he should use what's it called? I'm going to double check. str case compare. Doing case insensitive checks in C, you know, that's a chapter in itself, annoyingly enough. So I'm actually checking it's called str, I don't remember what I call it, str case comp. No, that's not the one. This is the first broadcast in a while. I haven't streamed any development for, I don't know, a month or so, maybe more. So no, but I certainly intend to upload it to YouTube, and I intend to keep doing these streams every now and then too. Sometimes I get stuck up with that I don't feel that I have any particularly major thing to work on, to just make sure that the quality on these streams are more than just me fiddling around with different smaller things. But I don't know. I'm sure it'll come and go a little bit what I feel like doing. But I think it's fun, so I'm going to try to keep them coming. Don't we have any? This is using the old str case compare. And we include strcase.age from the tool code on many places, but that's the one. Oh yes, that's the one. That's actually, there it is. Yeah. Is that? Yeah, those are the example of functions I should remove from the API if I ever would change it, because if there's some of the mistakes I did with the API or with libcurl originally, and we have suffered from it since, it was that I was a bit too keen to add functions to the API. You know, here's another function we could make portable for applications. Let's do case-insensitive string comparisons for applications. But I think it was wrong, because I don't think it's not transfer related. It shouldn't be provided by curl. If someone else would want to provide such a function, someone else should do it, but it shouldn't be in curl. But now we do it and we support it, and sure. So, therefore, string comp should be exactly. So whatever we support is supported forever. And of course, in this particular case, just doing a case-insensitive string comparison, that's not a lot of work, and you know, it's not likely to change much ever anyway. So in this particular case, I think it's easy to keep the support in there forever. I'm just not so happy when I can say things like, oh, in curl we only do this, and we make sure that we say no to everything else, and then we have one of these blatant examples when we certainly didn't follow that rule, and it sort of annoys me that I did that too. So, no, for you have to follow the rules, and for me, I couldn't even stick to my own rules back in the day, so I did all these. Oh well. We learn over time. Right, internals versus externals, but yeah, anything that is curl with a small c, that is a lowercase c, that is the external API. So, and of course, everything, all those defines and everything else in the curl.h and other public header files. Everything that is the public thing. Everything else is not public. So we're actually having a little bit of a gray zone where we actually support. When we build the curl tool, it actually uses source code from the library. So they're not actually used API-wise. They're actually built source from the library that is used in the tool. But that's only because I learned that we shouldn't provide APIs just to make the curl tool be able to use code from the library. So we use the same code instead, sort of just reach under the hood and use the same code, so that we don't have to provide an API for the world, but we can use the code. So I suggest use maybe not a question mark. So okay, code review 101, malloc okay. Here's an interesting. Scan e-tag header and extract the string between double quotes. So he limits it to 512 bytes. I'm not a big fan of scanf like this because it's a bit hard to read and understand. But okay. And also he scans it, he can just as well just... So he makes a malloc, he scans it, and then he writes it, and then he frees it, both of them. No, it's... What's the... Oh, it may make some... Why? He doesn't do any manipulation here. There's no manipulation down on the string. Can we drop the pseudo? Because it seems unnecessary to do memory management if we don't need to. And aha! This is the function. Now I need to check. One of the things that a lot of people do wrong when using libcurl in general, and I think this that it's the file name is callback header, is that it assumes a zero, terminating 0 byte. But how is the... Do not assume that the header line is 0 terminated. That's the line I was looking for. And I believe it does here. I go back to the code. See, it makes a stirred up here and it assumes that it is Can we up the stirred up? Also, the stir. I'm going to double check the code again. It's in. Yeah, the stir comes there. I wonder if something else here assumes. Okay, back to the code. Oh, sorry, not the coffee break. Maybe I should have a coffee break, right? Okay, everyone has a coffee break. I'll be back in, well, it's a test. How fast can I make a coffee break? No, I'll just go and do a refill and I'll be back. There. Coffee. So I think I did it in less than 3 minutes. I think that's good. So, review. Yeah, also the stir pointer is not pointing to a zero terminated string. How about pointer for where the start of the tag is and the length of the tag? So if I would do it, how would I do it? Yeah. Then you could use memshare here or similar to find the double quotes. And I'm mentioning memshare. Pronouncing C function names is a great thing to do. So I use that instead of the str version because the str version, of course, assumes a zero terminated string, and this isn't zero terminated. Okay. Yeah, I want him to remove the mallocs and free, so from there. F flush. Yeah, maybe you should have an F flush there. I'm not sure F flush is that necessary to have that. But I don't think it hurts anything. Otherwise, I think it's fine. I think he has done it really good. Get an E tag, the return, save it to a file. E tag from file. File to string. Let me see how that works. There it is. Wait a minute, what does it do? This file to string already allocs, right? So I'm not sure. E tag from file. Yeah, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, so if you open an empty file, it'll do this. And that's what it needs to... Well, it needs to malloc, because otherwise Okay. Allocates memory for the file by itself. No need to I don't think he needs to check the size at all. And file to string removes new lines. There shouldn't exist any to remove. Removes new lines on load in the buffer. Maybe me reviewing code isn't the sexiest developer stream, but works that needs to be done. So header, create buffer to store constructed custom header 18 because if string. Right, so he creates a header. I propose you use, and I'm just going to see if we use it somewhere else, because we have a this function, which is a which is a curl special thing. Since we have our own print code, we can actually do things like this. Like that. It's more convenient as a sort of curl safe free already clears. Because curl safe free is actually a macro that calls a free on the pointer and sets the pointer to null. Because it's a very common pattern, you know. So you're free and you want to clear the variable afterwards, so just make sure that it's notable. Yep. Oh, it already, that turned out to be 10 comments, but I think they were all relevant and fairly smallish. They will help you verify that things work as intended and that yeps, bam. That was a code review. So I've been streaming almost 2 hours now. I think I'm going to wrap up soon. Let's see what I can do more. Any requests? I have some issues. Okay then, let's do this forever. I will never stop. Well, issues. Right? Yeah, I have coffee. I still have coffee. Can always take another coffee break. Well, at some point I need food. It's 11:30 here soon. I will just presume that most of you who are here are in a European time zone anyway, because now the American time zone is a bit rough. Okay, back to my issues here. Use after free. That one is I have a fix pending. That one I have a fix pending. Discussion on fuzzing. Yeah, the discussion of fuzzing is just a discussion on how to build things for the fuzzer to reach internals. Here's an interesting one. But it's a very difficult one. This is another HTTP 3 issue when you build with quiche, the quiche library, and the reporter here, he manages to get curl to hang like 6 times out of 100, I think, in his something like that, 1 in 10 or so. I've not managed to reproduce. It's really difficult. It's somewhere in the interaction between the library quiche and curl, and it's not really sure what's going on. And since I can't reproduce, it's really tricky is the word. So I don't know what to do there really. And here's an issue by Jay. He filed it, but it's an error message problem on Windows. Because on Windows, Arno, I mentioned it before how Windows is the odd one in all the cases, and in the case of Arno, it is also an odd case. So you can't just use Arno when doing things on Windows, as you can on virtually all other platforms, because they don't use Arno everywhere. So they have these socket errors in a different function call, and it's a little bit of a confusion in the curl code how to do that, and that's Jay is working on it. There's a crash. Let's check. I think sometimes people post comments like this, and then then this is really unreadable, and then you do it like this, let's edit it. Code sniff, and we call it a C code to look easier to read. Nice trick there, GitHub. In this case, maybe not much easier to read, but still. So he makes a recursive call to curl easy perf. What? He's actually calling with the same. I don't know. It looks like he's using the same easy handle. Whoa. So he makes a recursive call to easy perform from within a callback. I thought we prevented that, but maybe we didn't do that for that function. Where's the code? Where's the code? Easy perform. Easy perform. Easy perform. Yeah, right. Exactly. Easy perform. We don't. That where we do. There. So it's not that simple. Unless it's from a function call that we don't. So he does it from this what's it called? This one. Give application a chance to interfere with SSL setup. That's a good choice of words. Interfere. And you know what? It doesn't prevent recursive calls at all. It should. I don't remember. Let's call back. I think it should do this. Set in callback. Set in callback data true. Set in callback data false. And this just sets a little bit in the handle that it's calling a callback, and then because if the callback itself then uses libcurl functions, they will say don't call it recursively because it's not going to work. So let's make a little pull request to prevent recursive calls, because that is going to break things the way that user did. Okay, let me respond. If you really want to use curl easy perform from within the callback, you need to create a new easy handle path. But maybe you should. It's complicated when people call back into the library from callbacks. But I probably wouldn't advise doing recursively calls like this. I do curl full time since early this year. I work for Wolf SSL. We do curl support for whoever wants curl help. So yes, I do curl, but curl turns 22 years old in this coming spring. So yeah, I worked on curl as my spare time project for 21 years before I got it as a full-time gig. So I've done it a lot on the side. But yeah, sure, I do other projects as well. Of course, curl is not the only thing I do. I do a lot of other things too, but most of them are related to curl in one way or another, or side projects that make sure that curl gets better. So most of curl is most of what I do is around curl, or making sure that curl is as good as possible, as good as I can make it, or as bad. So yeah, I do a lot of talks about HTTP and HTTP 3 in particular right now. If you're in Umeå on Thursday, I will be in Umeå University and talk about HTTP 3. I will also be in Copenhagen next week. I'll go to Copenhagen and talk about HTTP 3. And I will soon be at internetdagarna in Stockholm and talk about HTTP 3 there too. So a lot of HTTP 3. And if you want to see, one of the most viewed YouTube videos of me ever is my HTTP 3 talk from Full Stack Fest in Sitges in Spain. I did in September this year. That if you want to see and learn about HTTP 3. See if I can find it. I can't find it like that. It's somewhere. You can actually find it from my homepage. So if you go to my homepage, daniel.hex.se, and there's a videos link, and you can actually see videos that I've done. Videos that I've done. They're mostly presentations that I've done, talks at different conferences, at different occasions, and people have recorded them and put them on YouTube. So they're mostly not on my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel, of course, that I upload these things on. But a lot of these talks that you can see on my screen here, yeah, exactly, that's the URL. So they're usually from other sources, other conferences, like this one, there's the Nordic APIs conference, and that's the Full Stack Fest conference, and that's where's that? That's at Klarna in Stockholm for a company, and then that's the JAX conference, and blah blah blah. That's the FOSS North conference, and that's where's that? I think that is FOSDEM 2019. I proposed a talk at FOSDEM 2020 as well about HTTP 3, but I haven't got any confirmation yet, so I don't know where that goes. This particular one, HTTP over quick, is the next generation. That's, as I mentioned, that's the most viewed YouTube video with me ever. It's actually had something like 40k views right now. It's kind of amazing for such a niche subject as HTTP 3 and quick. But at least it's a sort of an overview and an intro to what HTTP 3 is and why, and how we came to this point, and some of the challenges and so on. And HTTP 3 is not shipped yet, and it's not going to be shipped until some point in 2020. At least not earlier, at least. So there's an interim meeting in February at least. So it's not going to be, the specs are not going to be done before that. So I would say maybe mid 2020 now. Right. So back to my, that's the crash and verify. I think that might then be the reason. So he's doing a recursive callback to curl easy perform on the same handle that he got the callback from. So that's, I'd say that's a big no-no. So I will go back and make my pull request to make sure that it actually doesn't work the next time he tries it, and it'll return. So I'll just, can't do it correctly. So I'll just, because we already have this system in place where I set a little bit, call the callback and switch off the bit when the callback returns. And in a bunch of places we check, is the bit set? You're doing a recursive call, don't allow it. So it just follows that pattern and it's easy to do. Yeah, but I don't think it was a Linux, but underscores in general. I think there's some spec somewhere that says that you can't have host names that starts with an underscore or something. I think there's a spec somewhere that says you can start with a dash. So there are some. I think there have been some specs that says you shouldn't use those things for host names. And for example, in DNS they use that for some magic names. But I think that's just a recommendation, so it's really not something that, for example, the get host other and functions actually, care about. So, and curl never cared about it. So if you ask curl for a host name that starts or ends with whatever letters you want, dash or underscore or whatever, curl will resolve it. So it's never been a problem for curl, I think, unless your get other info or particular name resolver function would have a problem with it. But I don't think anyone has. I can't recall anyone that has had it. So not that I recall. Sure, I was around in 2009 and 2010, but I don't recall any particular problems with that, with curl or others actually. I know that I know the browsers do some magic to remove some of those host names, but they do it for other reasons. And let's keep this one episode where I don't whine on the URL standard. Systemd. There's no systemd related issues here. I actually can't even imagine what a systemd related issue would be with curl. But okay, back to my little. I'm going to create another pull request. Open SSL. This option has a really crappy name. I can never really remember it. Well, maybe we have too many options, but it's actually called SSL context callback. Open SSL context CTX callback. It's like an entire novel in the branch name here, but okay. Let's do it like this. Open SSL prevent recursive, and again the spelling, prevent recursive function calls from CTX callbacks. to the 4546. 4546. Follow the pattern of many other callbacks. Yes, Badger is a typo of Badger, but it's a typo of Badger since a very long time back. So it stuck with me. I actually picked it, I think, in 1986 or so when I was working on a Commodore 64. When I was doing demos on Commodore 64, and I wanted a nickname. And then I figured I was kind of cool. It was different, so it was very unique since it was meant to be Badger. It became Bagder, and then I kept it just because it was more unique. But I also understand that having a misspelled nick like that makes it, a lot of people then misspell it by spelling it correctly. But that's just life. So okay, OpenSSL prevent recursive function calls from bang. Oh, you didn't see that. I forgot to change to Firefox. Oh, not the coffee break. Here's the, I just filed that new pull request here. And if you're in the IRC channel, you will also see a notice where it said, oh, I filed a new pull request. Because we have a little bot that sends notices for all pull requests. Beep. I've been thinking about putting up the IRC window here next to the Twit chat as well, but I think that might be a little bit too noisy. Because some of the IRC visitors, of course, won't know that I'm doing streaming and vice versa. So okay. Okay, that was the pull request, and let's see where the other pull request went. Boom, I did that one. And if there's anything that was a lot of red. I was going to say that we do have a lot of false positives in the CI builds, but I think this is more than false positives. This is something wrong in my pull request. Well, we're all newbies in something, right? So okay, test case 1538. 1538. Okay. Let's see what 1538 complains about. 1538. Stir error API call tests. Okay. Yeah, that seems fair. I didn't update the test, so I got an error. So what did I call the branch name? I called it quiche reject bad header. Back to my code. Check out. Not that. That's the one I wanted. Bad header, and what's the test case was, you can see this now, but this was 1538. So let's go back to tests, data test 1538. There are all the error codes, so I'm just verifying that they're all right, and number 20 is HTTP3 error. So better rebuild and just verify that 1538 is now fine. Sometimes I get a bit lazy and I don't run all the test cases locally, and then I get to suffer instead, or the CIs get to suffer because they have to run and find out the problems for me. But I still have to run the CIs anyway, right? So it's sometimes I even remember to not use all the cores on my computer when I build, because then my video stutters and everything, but sometimes I forget. So I run build in the build directory first, and then I run make in the test directory. And since most of I build everything, typically I build my development build statically, so it rebuilds everything when I rebuild library. And now I run test 1538. Tester error API call tests. And now it works. Fix up test 1538. Tester error output. And let's push to that again. Where is it? That's the name. Push, boom. So restart the CIs and just look at it. Where are we? Remove that, go there. And conversation. Boom, fix up, and it's restarted the CIs. Yes. The YouTube link for that video. Works for me. The video for that HTTP3 talk is there. For my channel, for my YouTube channel, it's where is it? Sorry, something went wrong. No, it seems totally broken. Look, there's my YouTube channel, and you can actually see it now. So I'm not sure I should show you all that, but I don't know. Let's not go there right now. What I do, I very rarely do talks in any other languages than English. So yes, most of my talks are in English, and most of my talks are recorded, and most of them are published on my YouTube channel. It's pointing to the wrong URL in my Twitch bio. Okay, but I'll fix that later. Most of my, that YouTube video, that's probably my laptop here. Here's my work laptop. It's actually, well, work. I do, you can see all my funny stickers. I do all my presentations on this. It's just a nowadays, when I only do curl development, I don't need a very powerful machine. I'd rather have a lighter one. Yeah, I have a Rust sticker. Well, I have other fun stickers too. So yeah, I don't need a very powerful one. This is a Lenovo ThinkPad T470S, I believe it's called. It's one of those lighter ones. It's pretty neat to just carry around. Yeah, I have one of those wget is not a crime stickers, which I think is fun. No, but I'm good friends with the wget people. They're fun. So yeah, that's going. So back to I consider my Rust sticker more of an ironic Rust sticker. I think Rust is fine. I don't develop anything in it, so I don't have any particular insights, so I can't really comment much on the particular language or anything. I find it interesting that so many Rust people talk about porting things to Rust whenever I talk to them, so that's what for the ironic part of it. Follow the pattern. Okay, so obviously this wasn't good enough. What? No. Okay, so this was just completely broken. Well, my experience with Rust is that it has this feeling for, like you do with all the other modern, like JavaScript, you have to update it constantly. If you just leave it for a few weeks or so, everything has gone out of date and you have to update it. The language, all the cargo things and whatever. It feels, I don't know. I'm sure it's good, but it comes back again to they have a different view of what a language is and how you should develop for things. You probably need to be very online and very active to do anything in Rust. That's sort of my feeling for it. But again, I can't really judge because I've only tested it. I've only used it casually. I built other projects too that use it, but it feels weird that every other project updates and requires a new Rust version every other month. So how is this supposed to be a language to go to replace something stable? So no, I'm sure it'll be fine. It'll be an awesome thing, but it's not something for me, and that's for Curl, certainly. Yeah, well, a few wrong URLs every here and there, that just adds to the challenge to find my stuff. Yeah, I think, yeah. Anyway, I think Rust is interesting as a concept, and it might be a bit early still. So yeah, I think it has the future ahead of it. And we'll see how well it turns out to actually work. I wonder if my browser window is actually... Now what happened now? Stupid browser window. There. I have this bug on OBS that I'm using to stream, that sometimes if I do things with a few windows, OBS get confused and it drops the window and shows another window instead. Preferably my other, since I have multiple Firefox windows up and I'm only showing one of them, and sometimes it just whoops and shows another one instead, which is could be embarrassing if I showed something stupid in another window, but okay. So where am I? Back to some issues maybe. Well, I got red ones there, right? But they're fixed now. They were just stupid. Yeah, so the CI setup is fun. We have a lot of CIs. I think we have over 60 builds now for every commit and every PR. But the downside with having so many CIs and builds is that it's very rare that we get all of them built without a flaky sort of annoying failure that is just a false positive that I have to sort of click to rerun it, because the problems are more often CI failures than actual code failures. Yeah, it's dangerous to show the wrong things, but the fortunate thing for me is that most of my things are actually open source anyway, and open things that I work on. So even if I would suddenly drop into something else, it's usually okay to show. I'd say usually, because I'm sure I could find some embarrassing mistakes or whatever private files I didn't want to show the world. So that's of course a risk with doing things live like this, that you could screw up. Anyway, I have another option going. Here's an interesting thing, and you all could give me some valuable feedback here. I have this option, and it actually, when I introduced parallel downloads to curl a while ago. So nowadays, when you use the uppercase Z, you can actually ask curl to do, download all these URLs at the same time in parallel instead of one by one in serial manner. And that's awesome. I don't think it's very widely used yet, but I think it's a very cool feature. So yeah, so then you can you can specify 50 URLs and it'll download them all at once, wham, in parallel. And a little complicated thing, if you specify all those 50 URLs on the same hostname and they're using HTTP2, you could get them all, one connection and do 50 streams over that single connection, basically. But curl, in general, prioritize doing things early rather than wait. So if you do 50 transfers to the same hostname, it'll try to open new connections to all of them primarily, if there isn't one existing one. But there's an option to libcurl to say you rather wait to see if you can reuse an existing sort of earlier connection. And I want to change the parallel download thing for curl to use that option to make sure that if you do 50 transfers to the same hostname, it would rather easier use streams over HTTP2 than separate connections, which would be more lightweight, would be faster, would be nicer for everyone. And I want to switch on that in the next release, but I also want to offer an option that says don't wait and try to do streams. You should prefer to do new connections early. And that is what this command line option is supposed to say. Please use connections early rather than wait and try to do it streamed over another connection. But what should I call the command line option? Naming is really hard, and naming command line options is well, it's also really hard. So and this before this option, what's already landed, we have 226 command line options. This is potentially number 227. The name is going to stick in there forever, so it makes sense to stop and think a little bit about what to call it. And in this pull request, Jay suggested maybe we should call it parallel no wait. I don't really like that, so I proposed a few others also, but Jay didn't like any of those. So just I'm sort of waiting for inspiration or someone else to chime in, or maybe I'll roll a dice. Maybe. Yeah, but I don't want to overcomplicate it, so I don't want to specify wait time. Right now, it'll wait until we know something about the previous connection. So if you do 2 connections or 2 transfers for the same hostname, it'll just wait for the first one to confirm or deny that it can do streams or not. So it'll just wait for the other one. So I think that is what you want to do. So yeah, because there's actually no timeout internally, so there's no libcurl option to say wait for an existing connection for this many milliseconds. If there is an existing transfer that is setting up a connection, wait for that connection to confirm or deny that it can be streamed over it. And I think that's usually good enough. But right now I'm mostly struggling with the name. Difficult. And I haven't really made up my mind yet, so I think I'll wait a little longer. He also remarked on my help string for the option, and I think he is correct that I should polish it, but another option is to not land the command line option name at all and just do the little change internally first, because usually that is, I mean, this is one of these options that probably very, very few users will ever use. So yeah, I'm a little bit now I suddenly got more keen to just land the change and wait with the command line option to disable it. Right or wrong, right or wrong. I'll think about that a bit more. Sometimes the lack of feedback or lack of people to talk to and get opinions from makes it harder to make the decision, because I need to come up with the decision, and yeah. Yeah, but descriptive and sounds good is the same thing here for me. I mean, it shouldn't just be a funny name. It should be, the name should possibly imply what it does, or what good it is. Why, if you see a command line, I mean, you should roughly be able to guess. If you see the command line and you know the territory of what you're doing, I think it would be good if the command line option at least hinted about what it is happening. It's really hard, of course, but I'm doing my best. And it's not 260, it's 226. So we're years off 260. I usually show this graph in my curl presentations about the number of curl command line options over time in the curl project, and that's a fun little graph, because let's see if I can find that. I'll just show you. I'll just hide my browser for now, because I'm going to head off and see what I can slide. Command line. What? I don't have that. Command line. Slide number of command line options. Okay, here it is. Kaboom. Stupid. Oops, and then it forgot about my Firefox again. Hang on. There it is. Boom. So here's the slide from my curl presentation, reasonably recently updated. Number of command line options over time in the curl project. So we started less than 100 back in 2004, and we're now on 200, and I guess we had 225 or so when I made this slide. Yeah, exactly. That's like 10 new per year or so. As you can see on the graph, it's not completely linear. I think some of these are when we added support for HTTPS proxy, for example. We added a whole bunch of those HTTPS related options. We added proxy versions for them. So I think we added this little bump here is, I think we added 20 options in a single go or something. So maybe if we check the recent years, we've been over 200 for maybe 4 years. So maybe we're down to a little slower than 10 per year nowadays. Maybe we'd only do 5, 6 per year. Maybe. I don't think it's actually, it's not a function of year. It's more of whatever, if we add features that need command line options or tweaks that need options, we add options. And the general thing with curl is, the general behavior of curl is to do things by default as before. So we usually leave existing behavior as it is, and we add new behavior by enabling it. And by enabling it, we need options to enable it. If you want to see my... No, I don't think... By the way, I haven't... videos. Where's my videos? Oh, that's the curl videos. I wanted to show you my videos. I haven't done any curl presentation on video for a while. For a very long time. Well, I did one recently at the Driving IT conference in Copenhagen, and they recorded it. So hopefully soon I'll have an updated curl presentation here about sort of the project, how it works, how it became like this, and then sort of showing off things. Otherwise, I might consider recording my own presentation like this just over the stream. Could be fun. Could do that one of these days. But now I'm getting hungry, so now I'm going to shut off the stream for today, I think, and get into some more debugging of things and try to figure out. And I'm going to also dig into the HTTP3 issues I have with buffer sizes. Oops. Wait, where am I? Oh, where am I? You didn't see that, but I messed up everything. And so I have this issue. So I have this issue. I have a problem with buffer sizes in curl and downloading things with HTTP3. Especially if you're using smaller buffer sizes. And it's a pretty difficult thing. So I'm not going to get into the details, but it's specified here. Mr. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Blaske. Well, he outlines it very good here. So it basically means that we need to deal with data from HTTP3 in a better way, so that we don't need to have these big buffers. So yeah, I'm going to dig into that. I think I'm going to do that after lunch. I'm going to eat lunch now. Maybe I should get back to do some streaming tomorrow. Maybe I'll dig around a little bit about the buffering thing, and maybe I'll do some HTTP3 buffering code tomorrow. Adding options in a modern blah blah blah. Adding something as an option in a dialog based on context. Well, I don't think we can do that because the API works as it does, right? So I only have a few limited ways to add things to curl, and most things we add to curl there are switches. So just switch on, switch off, and most of them are independent of each other. So I don't think we have a lot of things to gain by changing that. You switch on, switch off features, or you switch on a set of things, you provide things, or you don't provide it. So I think we do that already in a pretty good way. It's just that it, of course, becomes quite many different things to do. But generally, most transfers and most users, you don't have to care much about all the particular details. But if you want to change that particular little detail, curl has that covered for you. So, okay, let me do like this. I'll try, and I think I'll be back tomorrow morning again, same time tomorrow, 9:30 tomorrow, Tuesday, and I'll see if I can dig up some fun buffering headache, hair tearing problems and deal with them then, because they're tricky and they're sort of an interchange between curl and the HTTP3 libraries in question and some other things. But that could be fun. So let's try that tomorrow, and I'll go and have some raid my fridge now and see what I can come up with for lunch today. Very good chat today, everyone, and see you later.